Greetings everybody, my name is Rayvenwing and welcome back to the Desert City series. This is episode 6, I think, or 5. It depends on how I numbered the last one, I'll figure it out. Anyway, today I will be building the shop and home of the Green Sticks stall owner. I really need to come up with names for these characters at some point, but I have a rough idea of how I want to build this shop, so let's get started. As you can see, I've already rebuilt my original bamboo and sugarcane farm up here, which you'll recognize from the build tour, but now I just have 2 of them. The original is down here. I think that I'll just have 2 until I need to take the original one down. It is useful to have extra wood and sugarcane. But anyway, I've already messed around a bit with where I want the river to move through this area, because I wanted this building to have some room to breathe, and I also have an idea for a path along here. Well, that's not great, but I guess that's a problem that'll be solved once I have a roof on this thing. I should probably check. I haven't actually checked how this is doing in a while. Oh, that's doing pretty good. I need to empty that, actually. Nice. So I'm going to start by just putting in an outer shell to cover most of the farm itself, but I'll leave a bit open so that it will be visible from inside the shop.
Uh-huh.
So with projects like these that I'm thinking are going to be a bit of an odd shape or an interesting shape, and even when it is a simple shape, I like to get that shape down first before I worry about colors or gradients or texture or anything like that. So I start out by just throwing down some stone because it's something I have a lot of, it's quick to mine, it's a pretty convenient planning out tool. Otherwise I usually use like dirt or something. But I just try to get a feel for how big I want things to be, how high I want things to be, if I need to move something, if I need to adjust the size or scoot something over. So I'm just trying to give myself a way to visualize what I want to build and how it fits within the space I'm trying to build it in. And actually being able to put blocks down helps me to figure out what I'm working with. Obviously, it doesn't give a whole picture of what the whole thing is going to look like when it's done, because it's in completely different colors and textures and all that, but it helps me a lot, and it sort of acts like a rough draft in writing or a sketch in drawing. It's a good outline. My initial vision for this shop, especially as I was trying to plan out how big the farm would be on this upper level, because this area is not very big. Especially the river used to come closer to where this building is, and I realized that I needed more space to work with, so I moved the outline for the river to give me just a few extra blocks. I messed with the orientation of the farm a few times before I eventually decided on the sideways version with the shop on one end. Plus, I wanted it to be, for the general feeling of the shop, I wanted it to be kind of open air. I wanted it to be inviting. I wanted it to be friendly. I wanted it to be like shaded and cool, given that it's a desert. Just sort of to invite people to walk in and chat and hang out and buy what they need. It also just feel like a welcome social environment, since the owner of the Green Sticks shop is a very social and knowledgeable person. He knows a lot of the people around, he tends to make friends with the people he talks to, and so I wanted the shop to reflect that. Kind of messed with how high I wanted the walls, and switched over to slabs to figure out how high I want the ceiling, because I knew pretty early on that I wanted to use bamboo slabs for the roof, but I needed to figure out where that roof line was and whether it would work with the build overall. I also played around with this for a second with campfires, but I didn't really like how that looked. With this part of the roof, I was mostly worried about making sure that you could still see through the window into the farm. I didn't want to block off the upper levels of that window, because I like the window. Because I thought that would be kind of fun. You go to get some bamboo or sugarcane, and you can see it being farmed right there. And so I didn't want to... A, I didn't want to make the shop that tall, but B, I didn't want to block off the upper part of that window. So I put a little hole in the roof there so that you could pretty easily see the entirety of the window without having to make the entire roof that high. And then it was mostly just experimenting with different levels for the roof to be, and for the immediate stair step down, or like every couple of blocks going down one. There will probably be some stretches of silence. I'll try to put some music in, but I always like to step back for a moment to look at how it's going, figure out the pillars, show my skill at placing blocks correctly. I'm not planning on doing another me falling off of things compilation, especially because I don't think I fell off nearly as much with this build, but there'd still be a few. And see, as I'm slowly starting to add in details and switch out blocks and figure out what ones I want to actually include in the build, I can just take away that stone that I put in and replace it with whatever I want to actually have, like these bamboo pillars and the roof and those little bits of fences as detail. Wanted to cap those off with a bamboo slab just to make them look a little bit more finished, so it's not just sticking out the top. I decided to take some of the logic from the from some of the stall designs where you use the counter is also storage. So I just used a line of barrels there and some trapdoors to help them blend into what will eventually be the surroundings but aren't quite there yet. I debated with putting trapdoors on the top of the barrels as well to be a more cohesive counter, but ended up going against it just because I felt like that would be a bit too much. Even though I don't know how many people are going to be seeing the top of the roof besides me flying by, I wanted to at least give it that little bit of an extra finished look by just finishing it. And then I finally added that last slab. See, now I'm replacing the stone stand-ins with sandstone stand-ins. I switch out some of the blocks later, but now it's heading towards the right color at least, before I add in details and texture. Because frog lights are directional, I wanted to make sure that they were consistent, even though you can't really see it in the end product. Still, I thought looked nice. I feel like by the end of this build, I am going to either still be struggling with placing trapdoors properly, or I'm going to become a master. The very specific skill of placing trapdoors. Kind of like with the vibrant moss color right alongside the pale sandstone colors, I wanted to make sure to include plenty of blue from water because some of the general idea of the city that I'm going for is kind of an oasis vibe, and I did manually go and get 1 bucket at a time for the first 4 before I did 2 buckets for the last 2. And here you can see I've started to add in some texturing with the sand, and tried some regular sandstone, but it's a little bit too different, so I stuck with just the sand there. Man, it's starting to take shape a little bit, starting to look right. And I wanted to add in the decorations, which of course meant I had to remove that trapdoor. I love some little offset shelves. And then here I was trying to remember which plants actually went in pots, and so just did some rapid fire testing to figure out which ones I could use. Most of these I did know that they didn't, or I had some inkling that they didn't work, but I just wanted to try them on the off chance that one of them would work that I wasn't expecting to, that I could use as decoration down the line. I initially put a bamboo in this one. I later changed it over to a cactus just so it wasn't at the same level as the ceiling. And I did remove the lamp because it was just a bit too much and that area was already lit enough anyway. So this is the main, at least outer structure of the stall done. Next up you'll see multiple efforts by me to avoid working on the floor. I didn't have a very clear idea of what I wanted the floor to look like. So instead of working on that immediately, one of those methods was to mess with the roof for the pathway a little bit. I wanted to do an overhanging roof so that that pathway would be nice and shaded and cool. And so I was playing around with about how tall I wanted it to be and how much of a droop I wanted to add to the roof. And I placed a few blocks for it, but I didn't really make a lot of decisions. I just kind of set up the first few just to have it there so I can keep an eye on it and kind of decide what I want to do from there. I gave it a starting point while procrastinating. But I put that in just to give me a visual, just to have the idea sitting there so I could think about it as I was working on everything else. And then I did the simple step of just adding in some steps. Just add in bamboo steps to the bamboo stall. Nothing complicated. So there's not really much walls beyond the back wall. And there's a big old window to the farm itself, which I'm thinking that the owner of the shop is very proud of. I myself am fairly proud of it because my skill with redstone is very limited, and that's one of the first and one of the only farms I've built without looking up a tutorial. I did have to Google some stuff about basic mechanics of how redstone works, but I did not look up a tutorial. And my redstone skills are about at where building that kind of a farm without a tutorial is impressive to me, so I will hold on to that, because it makes me feel accomplished, so I'm going to keep doing that. And you see, I kept on going up against the concept of what the floor was going to be. My first idea was something along the lines of stepping stones. I wanted to do a bamboo block stepping stone pattern with podzoil in between. And then I thought maybe I could do it with little pools of water and maybe have some lily pads just to add more of that blue from the water. And see, the idea's not bad. I wasn't quite satisfied with it. I tried filling in some blocks, seeing if I could mess with the pattern a little bit, if it would be better. I still didn't like it. I kept changing it. I tried to mix in the podzoil, see if the browns would help, since they're darker and a bit more intense. And then I got distracted for a little while to try to get the podzol itself, because I only had like 5 pieces. I need to look up if that spreads naturally or not. I thought that it spread like grass did, but the patch I started didn't seem to spread on its own, and bone meal didn't seem to work either, so I don't know if you can only get that through growing spruce trees, but that's what I ended up doing, so. And then after I got sidetracked with getting podzol, I got sidetracked with terraforming this area by the tree merchant's house a little bit. I wanted to mix in some wool just to blend with the podzol and the moss and the grass. Definitely not procrastinating. What do you mean? This is definitely an essential element to work on. I guess at least even if I'm procrastinating, I'm doing something. And I eventually got back to it. This time I actually made a little water source so that I wouldn't have to fly up every time I wanted a bucket of water. I feel like the concept of the podzol with the bamboo stepping stones and the water and the lily pads is interesting, and I kind of want to use that. I have the idea of having a little garden to the right of the green sticks shop, but I'm not sure. This is me trying a similar idea again, just with a more formed path, which is what I ended up deciding to go with for the time being. I did still experiment a little more to see if something else might look a little nicer. I had to get out of that little hole so many times. Because I didn't really have a good way in and out. I eventually added a ladder. You'll see that in the next episode, but otherwise I just kind of had to keep breaking that sand block. As you can see, I turned it back to the podzol. I like that better. I eventually kind of decided that that was how I wanted it to look for now. I added a few more details, but I was really near the end of working on this floor here. I was just kind of messing with things, trying to see what worked. Most of it wasn't working. I removed a few whole attempts from this video because it was just a lot of me digging things up, breaking things, placing them, trying to move it a little bit, see if that works. It doesn't. Go back to the previous. It wasn't very entertaining. It was pretty repetitive. Okay, so as you can probably tell, I'm not quite done with this build, yet the video is almost over. That is because this one took me longer than expected, and I've had some distractions, issues with inspiration, and issues with motivation, honestly. So I stepped away from it for a bit, I've done some other stuff, and I've worked on it a little in the background without recording it. I've also decided to split this episode into 2 parts, so next time I will go into decorating the farm itself, the path and walkway out front, and the owner's home. That will hopefully wrap up the build nicely, and then I can move on to the next one. So for now, I will leave you with the sign-off. See you next time!